Good evening, everyone. Before I call tonight's meeting to order, I'd like to take a moment on behalf of the entire board to extend our condolences to the family of Cindy Sanders following her recent passing. Cindy was a devoted educator with more than 35 years of service in public education. She retired from our district in 2023 after 23 years, most of which she spent preparing young minds for their educational journey as a kindergarten teacher at Lucas Elementary. Cindy was known for her talent and passion in the classroom, as well as the warmth she brought to everyone she met. Her smile greeted friends and strangers alike. Her longstanding commitment to our district left a lasting impact on countless children and families, and her legacy will continue to live on in those she touched. We join her husband, Doug, and daughters, Sarah and Shay, in mourning her loss. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. And good evening, and welcome to our October 28th, 2025 regular board meeting of directors. Thank you to those attending in person, joining us on Zoom, and staying engaged by watching our recording at a later time. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak during the community comment section of our agenda, they will need to fill out a speaker form located in the back of the boardroom on the table on my left. Speaker forms can be turned in to our board secretary, Kim Coven, seated at the end of our board table. Comments will take place during a designated portion of our agenda. Before we dive into tonight's agenda, I want to take a moment to introduce those seated at the table with me. To my right, we have Superintendent Degner, Directors Icestone, Eastham, and Williams. I'm President Malone. To my left, we have Vice President Abraham, Directors Finch and Lingo, and Board Secretary Coven. And with that, we will dive into tonight's first item, which is our education showcase. Brought to us by Northwest, but I don't know. Okay, look, there we go.
And I'll do the intro here tonight as Kimberly and Malaysia work their way towards the podium here. A couple great representatives of our middle school staff that are going to communicate and display the amazing work that they've done to approach behavior in a different way and to rethink and approach it with the entire child in mind. So excited to see the data and the presentation that they're about to show you. Take it away, you two stellar staff members.
Well, I'm Kimberly Fitton, and I serve as proud principal of Northwest Middle School, and I'm joined by
Malaysia Clayton, engagement and intervention strategist.
And we're talking about Northwest Middle School's rethinking approaches to behavior. So we started with a problem of practice. After year one, we had some high suspension rates. Not some, they were unacceptable. So just to say the truth, speak the truth. So after our first year, we all agreed, admin-wise, that we needed to rethink some systems, our approaches to that, and then we joined our support team, which is made up of EIS, SF engagement, strategists like Ms. Clayton, student family advocates, counselors, admin, and facilitators, and sometimes supervisory pairs as well. To just talk about the kinks. So it was, how can Northwest Student Support Team decrease suspensions? The new agreements, some of them that we came up with starting year two, and I need to say that each year we promise to reflect and do something different and really set some agreements to call each other in when we're making rash decisions, and you'll see that here. So to identify peak behavior times, to see if the behaviors can be intervened and eliminated through a whole class or a whole group approach. For example, when 6th grade was added, We had issues during lunch passing time. That was just this year. So we have the one-way hallways, but because the students, sixth graders are panicking, they want to get to class on time, we decided that after lunch, where we were having our biggest issues with like, people don't want to be touched, right? So imagine almost 400 sixth graders trying to get to where they're going. We had some incidences and we said, okay, we can rethink this. How can we? So just for after lunch, after sixth grade lunch, they can go any direction. And we haven't had any issues. And that was like, it was decided in a day. And then we saw the data that supported that was a good decision, right? So just having those examples. Then Assistant Principal Baker, who is not here tonight, but when she brought this idea, we thought, I didn't believe in it. But it brings us back to commitments that if someone on the team has a good idea, we listen to that, right? We try it out. We use it as a hypothesis and go on from there. So most fights, our biggest and most impactful, occurred during passing time. The students weren't moving, even though we said walk, talk, be on time is our motto. And we are present in the hallway, they would still happen. And when the fights occurred, the students would then stop and spectate and record and all the other things, right? So we decided to implement a one-way hall system. And there were peace in our streets. Salmon don't swim upstream, right? It's easy to see and intervene that. And students were busy trying to get to their classes on time. Then another agreement would be there would be at least 4 interventions before sending students to the main office. So utilizing our experts in the building, our EIS are trained. Our district does a really great job at making sure that they're trained. And I'll be honest, our first year, Ms. Clayton being new to working in schools, but not new to working with kids, it's okay if I speak for you, would come to the table and say, but guys, we're not doing this right. And admin, sometimes we can disregard that, right? And so finally, after receiving training from Executive Director Gray, Cottrell and her team, and working with Mr. Kelly, Brad Kelly, we're like, okay, let's listen. So we had checks and balances. She checked us, and we were like, let us just start making those stops, right? When we have Northwest help, the staff responds. And when a kid ends up in the main office, they automatically think trouble. Let us create those stops in there. So that was the agreement. And then, can behavior be addressed by, for example, counseling team support? Is it just a simple conversation? Adding touch points, engagement intervention specialist, Ms. Clayton, Mr. Campbell, student family advocates. Is it an SFA issue that can intervene, right? Set up outside counseling or in-school therapy. I'm just really checking with the specialist, the experts in the building when it comes to determining the antecedents of the behavior, like what is causing this. Community service within Northwest. And then restorative conversations and conflict resolution agreements. The new agreement, if comprehensive behavior approach says intervention or 1 to 3 day suspensions are the choices, then the whole administration team must agree that all other interventions have been attempted and suspension is the best response. And I could show you our text thread last week where there was like, we need to suspend. I was like, no, have we done this? Have we done that? Have we done this? And if one challenges it, we think about it. And all agree that if we're suspending, it's because we've done everything we possibly can. If data shows that students need social emotional learning, that's SEL, around a specific topic, then curriculum is developed to guide them through the antecedents. Try student-specific social academic instructional group, that's SAGE intervention, and that is where Ms. Clayton specializes, and I have to toot her horn for her because she will not pat herself on the back. This was a growth area for our district and creating that curriculum and what does a SAGE group actually look like, and she asked the questions and rolled up her sleeves to do the work, and it's good work, as you'll see. So culturally responsive tier 2 support. Do you want to read this one?
Yep. So a lot of the work that I've done this year is based on our 6th graders from last year. We looked at their behavior data submitted into Panorama, and we just started with a baseline. Students who had 10 or more referrals from last year are going to be automatically placed in a group with me this year. And then what we're looking for is to decrease or not have any referrals this year. How I structured my group, was that to have them in class daily for the 42 minutes, to spread out some of that time. We're super structured in that Mondays, we kind of treat it as a success center, which we previously had at Northwest, but we no longer have. So that's just kind of like a makeup work day, checking on grades, cleaning out emails, things like that. Tuesday is like a practical skill building. So we're doing how to send an email, hygiene, how to write in cursive. Wednesday and Friday are curriculum days where we're working on the SEL SAGE curriculum. And then Thursdays is our Northwest Give Back that Kimberly was talking about. So this might be picking up trash around the building, helping white tables in the cafeteria, things of that nature.
And these are all student agreed upon, and then Emily Carew, our counselor team, teaches that as well. And it was basically, even though Miss Clayton is referring to the work done this year, this was started 2 years ago. And with this, focusing on our kids who had the biggest referrals as far as fighting, seeing how they, interpersonal skills, relationships, the things that middle schoolers really deal with. It was junior high then, and our ability was like, okay, our kids, the attendance data showed that our kids were at Northwest and wanted to be at Northwest. Now, how can we keep them in the classroom, keep from removing them, and to let them know we want them to be there? And we know the data supports that suspensions don't work, even though we have to do them sometimes. So her group work, we saw how well it went. And it wasn't even a full first year. It was like the end of try 3 or middle of try 2. And it was a dramatic turnaround. And we said, okay, well, let's expand it. So we're trying out the hour with 3 groups. So it's not all day, it's just with 3 groups to see the impact. And yeah, we'll talk about the success stories, so the results. So in this graph, the number of suspensions is the y-axis, and then X for total of suspensions, and then you have the gold for the SPED suspensions. And you'll see when we came in 2022-23, started the work, 23-24, and it's gone down, and it was so dramatic. I can tell you the last day of school of our first year, Erin Baker, assistant principal, and then Alexi Lalagos, who was there, spent the afternoon, the last day with Kate going through our data because it was so much, and not having to do that and seeing the kids in school is really huge. Lessons were created based upon the following: CASEL, the social emotional curriculum, PBIS, positive behavior intervention supports framework, and then iterative and formative. Not a one-size-fits-all, but based upon what the referral was, the lessons were created, right? And then also our other EIS in the building, like if there are students that are going through just different, like where you have divorce, you have things that make their cup full where they can't, they can't regulate. And so having those side conversations, if there's a group, kids that can't make friends, we just based upon the needs and the referral, really utilizing our data. And then students reported feeling more engaged, and teachers noted the improvement in engagement, students being in class and relationships being built. This is our favorite, our friends. Now, we can't tell you whom, of course, right? But this picture is so powerful because they got into some of our biggest, they were not, to get them to stand in this picture,
And they're
last year, they're good friends now. They help regulate each other, and that is the work of Miss Clayton for sure. And getting them to agree to it, getting their parents on board, and really being consistent with it. I mean, the picture is worth 1,000 words. This time last year, this would not have been possible. This is the beginning of this school year, and they are reminding each other, keeping each other accountable. It's truly Northwest. And this is the work that makes us feel super good. These wins motivated us to consistently challenge our systems and team responses and to do what is best for all kids. So, thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if directors had comments.
Do you mind?
Go ahead.
I'm blown away. This was so great. And I'm hearing two things that make a lot of difference to me. One, students can learn different behaviors. When they're encouraged, when the environment is good for them, and they have a lot of supportive adults around them. And you've done that part, I think, very well. The other thing I've heard that I really like is you're not relying upon each of you being an expert. You're relying upon your team as being an expert. And that, to me, makes a huge difference. We get a lot of correspondence here about student behavior. And you would think that every correspondent knows exactly what we should be doing. That's not the case. The group knows exactly what we should be doing, but each of us as individuals, we have a lot to learn. And I really appreciate that you're focused on that and you've done that.
I'll just say something. As always, I sincerely appreciate your style of leadership and how you listen to the people that you have around you, and you rule by consensus, and the team approach that you're taking in this. And you're not just changing the culture of your school, but you're changing the trajectory of these kids' lives in how you're turning behavior into a learning opportunity for them. So I'm so impressed. I echo what Charlie has to say. This is really, really wonderful, and thank you for sharing it with us.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah, the data is so amazing. I'm just like, math's not a strong skill, but it looks like almost a 33% drop in suspensions over a year period, which is incredible from like a big board view, right? Like we're, 33%. But it's at a minimum, right? Like 45 days that kids are now in school. Like, and that is such a micro level impact for those kids that's amazing. Like, it's really life-changing work. So proud of it. Thank you for coming and sharing with us.
It might be a little too early to know the answer, but something I think about, like with your new agreement of making sure that like you've tried everything before the referral happens or suspension happens or whatever. I'd be curious as to, once everyone becomes accustomed to, here are all the things you should be trying, that you don't ever have to kick it back because they've done it on their own. They've tried everything before it gets to that point where you have to say, have we tried it? Because you know that it's done. So I feel like with enough of that constant reinforcement that we have to try everything, you will know that it will have been tried already. Are you seeing that getting better yet?
Yeah, so I believe that teachers, I believe in Hattie's Tier 1 approach, right? That instruction is the approach. Teachers are to teach. And so we want them to make the referrals. We want them focused on that so that the referrals, the evidence for us, and that I can then trust my team to try all the things. And even when we try all the things, then sitting at the table and saying, is there something else we need to do? Who can we call in? What is somebody else doing for that? So if like leaders build leaders, right? So if I'm doing it right, Ms. Clayton won't need to have a conversation with me. She and Mr. Campbell and EP will have the conversation and say, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and we're going to tell the admin team this is what we're trying, and they can tell us no, or if this is automatic CBA, because you have those conversations where you have to abide by certain protocols, right, and procedures. But for the things that we see in middle school, we're there to teach kids how to navigate so that when they get to high school, they're used to being in the classroom for an extended amount of time. Teachers teach, and the curriculum and the teaching should intervene the behavior, but on a day where a kid's dysregulated, that's where we fly in, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to say how appreciative I am of the presentation. As a former middle school teacher, I wish the school that I taught in had a program like this with support from administrators like you.
Thank you so much. This is really impressive and fun to see. I think we've all known for a long, long time that suspensions don't work, don't help. And so I really respect what you've done. And I think it'll make things better for the kids when they're in high school. And so I think you're setting the tone, and I think it's going to move forward with them. And so that's great. Thank you.
My hope is that Mitch will call me and say,
He will.
thank you, Kim, right? Because my first year is now, they're now juniors.
Yeah.
West High should truly even be a better high by the time tonight's meeting. That's my hope.
Agreed.
Yeah, we will make sure to remind Principal Gross
Oh,
of
don't
that.
you worry, I'm ready.
But no, seriously, thank you for coming tonight, and thank you to you and your staff and teachers for putting in this effort and investing in our kids to make them the best that they can be. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have community comment. Thank you for your interest in the Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share your comments. You are reminded to give your name, address, and topic on which you would like to speak. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the districts. Speakers who make comments are reminded that they are responsible for their own statements and may be subject to legal action for those that are threatening, harassing, or defamatory in nature. It is expected that speakers will address the board and each other with civility and abide by the stated time limits. All community comment directed at non-agenda and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting, and each speaker will be limited to 4 minutes, or if an interpreter is required, 5 minutes. The initial community comment period will be limited to 1 hour. Remaining community comment, to the extent necessary, will take place at the end of the meeting. The board will not engage in any discussion during public comment. The role of the board during this time is to listen. And with that, our first speaker tonight is Emily Campbell.
Is this where I stand? Okay. Hi, my name's Emily Campbell, 2032 Ridgeway Drive in Iowa City. I'm the parent of a City High sophomore and a Southeast 8th grader, both of whom are very active in the Eastside band programs. I'm here to advocate for retaining the multi-purpose field at City High with turf. The multi-purpose field benefits our soccer teams and the hundreds of other students who use it, in part because it's located in the heart of City High's campus. As a member of the City High Marching Band, my son has used the field almost every day for the past 3 months. I'm disappointed that families of marching band and other students who use the field were not asked to complete the survey that was distributed to the City High soccer players, families, about the use of the multipurpose fields. So I'm here to advocate on their behalf. I understand that in a perfect world, our soccer players would have 2 fields, grass and turf, but because of the size of our campus, we have to choose. I'm strongly in favor of keeping a multipurpose field in the heart of City High's campus. The field is used heavily. Beginning the first week of August, 200 marching band students use the field every day for months as part of their school curriculum and their choice of extracurricular activities. If the field is converted to grass, by the time school starts, the field will essentially be dirt if the marching band continues to practice on it. Unlike turf, the grounds crew does not have the capacity to keep up with the stress the marching band will put on the grass. I've heard there's been consideration of making Bates Field into the multipurpose field. If this were the case, according to the marching band instructors, it would require 200 band students to lose an average of 10 minutes of instructional time per day, equivalent to 1 class period per week because of the longer walk. By prohibiting the band's use of the current multipurpose field, City High band instructors would not be able to deliver the same marching band curriculum as the other schools in the district. I ask that you also take into consideration the health and safety of the 200 marching band students who signed up for this course, in addition to soccer player health and safety. In my son's case, those 10 minutes of lost instructional time will be spent carrying a 30-pound tenor drum set to and from City High to Bates Field. From the flag corps to sousaphone players, the weight of carrying this type of equipment an additional 10 minutes per day is not inconsequential. For these reasons, I'm asking you to keep the multipurpose field in the heart of the City High campus. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, we have Julie Thomas, and thank you to Director Lingo, who will give warning when you're 2 minutes, I think
2 minute, 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Thank you.
Yes, hi, my name is Julie Thomas, and I'm also a City High parent, and I'm also here to talk about the resurfacing of the City High turf. I'm also a soccer parent. My son's played club soccer for the last 10 years and is about to start his second season at City High as a soccer player. My husband has also played soccer through the college level. So if the issue is what is best for soccer, turf or grass, I understand that in a perfect world, grass is better than turf. A well-maintained grass is better than turf. But the issue is not what is best for soccer, but what is best for City High. As we all know, City High has unique challenges when it comes to available space. It's extremely limited. My kids started their elementary years at Old Hoover. That space is now tennis courts and much-needed parking lot. Those tennis courts are used all year round, not only by the tennis team, but also by the community. It's great to see that bustling atmosphere on City High's campus. The current turf at City High, as Emily also pointed out, is used by not only the soccer players, by the 6 different soccer teams that we have, but also by the football team, the band. Multiple community groups use it, like the elementary school football teams. And also all summer long, my son played pickup soccer games there as well. By turning the field into a grass field, you're limiting the already limited space at our school. West High, Liberty High have space to have both a practice field and a game turf. City High does not. It would be impossible to maintain the field due to the City High use and the fact that soccer is a spring sport in Iowa. We know what the weather is like, so it's hard to keep it in good shape. An unkept muddy grass field is far more problematic than a turf field. I'd also like to add that I just recently heard that another option for soccer is if we did do a turf field was to move them off campus. And I'd like to say that I really disagree with that. You know, part of putting the tennis courts on where Hoover was to keep kids on campus for safety reasons, for creating a great campus for kids, a lively atmosphere for the kids. I really don't think that moving soccer off campus and having kids driving or walking or finding rides to get off campus just to play soccer would be a great idea. So I am asking that you consider to resurface it with the turf field so that it remains the use for the City High campus that it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Megan Ruse.
Hi, I'm Megan Rose. I have my husband Ben and I have 2 children. One is an 8th grader at Southeast, and the other is a junior at City High, and he's a goalkeeper on the City High boys soccer team. He's also played club soccer for 10 years. My comments tonight are to encourage you to approve the resurfacing of City High's turf field with new artificial turf surface and not grass. While we appreciate the new indoor turf practice field, which will be a huge asset for practices, it's not equivalent to a full field of turf. It's just a soccer field is 100 by 65 yards, which is wider than a football field. And the indoor space will be nowhere close to that, although it will be great. So I sent an email to the board on October 3rd. Since sending that email, I had a chance to get some information from Matt Harding, Liberty's boys soccer head coach, regarding what Liberty does to maintain the condition of their grass field. These things would be impossible at City High. So first, when the season starts in mid-March due to snow, rain, and soft field conditions, Liberty's teams practice on their turf football field. At City High, we're not allowed to practice on the football field because the grass needs to rest and recover during the spring. So we would have to cancel early season practices to protect grass fields. Second, Liberty boys typically play their first few matches of the year on Liberty's football turf. Without a turf option for games, a full field, City would have to postpone early season games. This would force us to play multiple weeks later in the season where we have 3 games per week. In soccer, 3 games per week is really hard on players' bodies, and you have a higher risk of injury in those kinds of weeks. It's also a competitive disadvantage for the postseason when we'd play teams that have had more reasonable pace of 2 games per week all season. Third, for the duration of Liberty's season, only their varsity teams practice on the grass field. The JV games use their grass practice field. City High does not have a full grass practice field. We have a grass space shared with discus throwers in the spring. Fourth, in the midseason, when Liberty's grass field is showing signs of wear, they actually move the field 15 feet to change the use pattern on the field. West High does this as well. Though City's renovation will widen the field's footprint somewhat, it will not result in enough extra width to shift the field. With the same use pattern all season, the condition of the grass, especially in the goal boxes, would suffer. Finally, during soccer's off-season, Liberty's field's locked, and it's used by the boys' team no more than once a week. No non-soccer users are allowed on the soccer field. This would be impossible at City High, given our other groups' needs. So maintaining a pristine grass soccer field at City High is simply not feasible. Moving soccer to the football field is also not feasible, since that field's narrower than the minimum required by Iowa high school rules. Wrapping up, I want to address the issue of safety. So in reviewing any research about the safety of artificial turf, I encourage you to look at whether the turf studied was Generation 3, which is the current standard, or a prior generation of turf, which is more like AstroTurf. Generation 3 is widely used for soccer and generally seen as safe. Of the 15 schools in our district, only 4, including Weston Liberty, play on grass. The boys state soccer tournament and semifinals and finals are now played on the turf field at Mediacom Stadium in Des Moines, which is where Drake plays. Our kids who play club soccer play on turf indoors all winter and at many of their outdoor events. As a parent, I'm not concerned about the heightened risk of injury on artificial turf. And certainly a turf field is safer than a muddy, rocky, or rutted out, overused grass field. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, we have Teresa Geneser. You can correct me. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Teresa Geneser. I live at 765 Barber Place in Iowa City. I have 3 children in the district. I have an 8th grade daughter, a 6th grade daughter, and a 1st grade son. My 8th grader and 6th grader at Southeast. And I am here to discuss the City High soccer field. I know I have sent emails to the board over the last month, and I thank you guys for your responses and for taking interest in my position and my thoughts. I did meet with Mr. Bacon, and I got a tour and reviewed the facilities, and I understand that City High is a landlocked facility, unlike our other schools. It is difficult to maintain and utilize the space given that we don't have the expansion available to West and to Liberty. The location of the current turf fields, just looking at it, you can see that grass would not work well there. And if there is no other option to put grass anywhere, I understand, and I'm the one that started the whole grass thing, I understand that grass may not be the ideal thing. What I want to really stress and discuss is that now we need to protect the fact that we were told we were getting a soccer field. We were told we were getting a stadium with bleachers and a widened field and a longer field and lights and all of these great things. So our varsity team can play at 7 p.m. instead of 4 p.m. And as we wrap around and see all of the different uses throughout the year, I fear that we are using words to walk around an issue that football needs that field. And it needs to have football lines on it. And it needs to be for football. And Mr. Bacon looked me in the eyes and told me that this would be primary soccer field. The primary lines would be white in soccer fields designation. To have football lines on it, as a soccer player, it hurts my heart to see football lines on a soccer field, but I understand that it's also a turf location that other people will be using. I want to just get assurances that this is being done for the co-ed sport of soccer, that a sport that has both girls and boys playing are being considered, that the turf that's selected is safe. More injuries happen to girls, usually knee injuries, than to boys, and football players are mostly boys. If football needs to practice somewhere, then they should consider turfing their field. They're the only 5A school in the state that does not have a turf field. And so please, when you're selecting things, please take the care and the time to consider that this sport needs love too. And we just don't want to be forgotten. We don't want to be a second thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that concludes community comment. Next up is approval for tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Second.
Thank you. Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote.
Online voting is open. Sean, I don't have you, Jane, or Molly.
I don't see it.
Oh, it's not going to, I'm a yay vote, Karen.
Thank you, Director Finch. Director Eystone, how would you like to vote?
Yay.
And Director Abraham, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Before we get to tonight's consent agenda, did any directors have questions regarding the bills that were reviewed this cycle? Hearing none, are there any items that directors would like to have pulled from tonight's consent agenda? I would like to have item 6, the assembly agreement, and item 16, appendix 9, pulled. Are there any other items? Hearing none, is there a motion for approval of the consent agenda minus 6 and 16? I can't talk tonight.
So moved.
Seconded.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote.
Online voting is open. Director Finch, did yours come up?
Yeah, I'm a yay vote.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. I pulled those two because I had questions. One came from a person from the community, and the other was just me wanting to know. So item 6 for assembly, I wanted to know whether or not they will offer training and assistance in moving our documents from Diligent Community, because I know Board Secretary Coven had to do all of that movement from Board Docs to Diligent last time, and the training for the Diligent platform. Yeah. So that was my question, and I found out that Assembly offers unlimited training, and they will do the data move for us. So yay. And full disclosure, I've used Assembly as part of the Iowa Association School Board Board of Directors, and it is great. So hopefully it lives up to other people's standards. So that's the only comment I had, a question. Any questions or comments from directors? Hearing none, is there a motion for approval for item number 6?
I move we approve item number 6 on the consent agenda.
Second.
Right. Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote.
Kim, I'm a yay vote.
Okay. Sorry, it took me a minute to move it. Now I got to get the motion. I'm sorry, but who moved them to approve the item? And who was second?
Seconded. Was there a second? I'm sorry.
It was Charlie.
Sorry.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. The next item was item 16, appendix 9. Part of the question that came from the community was regarding a change order for the district-wide cameras installation, and if the cameras are online as of yet. And I wanted to know if they weren't, which buildings didn't have cameras that were online. And I don't know if someone from administration want to jump in. I see. There we go.
I can,
The response we provided back to you guys in email today just included that we really had to do some updates on the server space for all that new camera footage, as well as the software for logging and viewing that video. And then just from a workload standpoint, the technology department's really been focused on deploying devices out with the new device deployment this fall. So we do hope to have that work complete by the end of the calendar year. But as of now, no building really has full access to that new suite of cameras yet.
Thank you. Were there any questions or comments from other directors?
It's more just, since it's been pulled, more a general curiosity question. With our buildings, how much of the approach to the buildings are covered with security cameras? Like with this new funding? Just, yeah.
You asking like inside or outside the building director lingo, and then
People coming up to the building, just being as protective and proactive as possible.
Yeah, I don't know if another team member would want to address that specifically, or if that's something we'd want to come back with to talk.
So each building has a video doorbell monitor, and so secretaries can view that video as people approach the building. And then there are traditionally, in most buildings, I won't say all buildings, at least a camera that is capturing the main sidewalk into the entrance. So you can see people approach even before they get to that doorbell camera.
Thank you.
Ready to move approval?
Yes.
I move approval of the consent item 16.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open.
I'm a yay vote.
Thank you, Director Finch. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. That takes us to policy review from our Policy and Governance Committee. And so I will turn it over to Director Williams, who will cover those 4 items for us.
Thank you. We had a busy P&G meeting today. We did the 300 series in our regular rotation. Not a lot of updates there, mostly just cleaning up some code and legislative references. We had a really great discussion, I thought, about the policy primer and the committee policy packet, I guess I would call it, recommended by IASB. We did something similar several years ago to this was a problem that I think probably larger districts deal with more regularly than smaller districts. So we have a policy that's similar to the primer, but IASB came out with a primer that is just a little bit more consistent and buttoned up. And so the general consensus is that we will likely replace our committee policy with the policy primer, although that is certainly something that we can discuss. We had a great discussion about 200.3R1, which we've been working on for several months now, and I think my understanding is that we are going to get a clean line version to look at the P&G meeting next month with the final vote for the November board meeting. And then last but not least, we discussed our animal policies, which I'm going to give a shout out to Nick Proud. He did all the legwork on getting our animal policies up to date, created, drafted. Lucas is looking at him, so I guess probably I shouldn't say all the work, but Nick did a lot of the work. Sorry, Lucas, if you had some thunder there with the animal policy. But it's a really interesting policy, and it's going to give us really good guidelines about when we can have service animals, emotional support animals, and therapeutic animals on our campuses, which I think will be a great thing to kind of shore up. So that's what we did at P&G.
Great. Any questions from directors or additional comments from those that sit on the committee? All right, that takes us to our first discussion item for tonight and an enrollment update. Superintendent Degner.
This microphone's really far away. I was telling Kim before the meeting, I haven't done anything from over here yet, so everything's still new for me here. But I have a couple of documents I wanted to just kind of share with you guys tonight that shows the different urban ed network districts and some enrollment trends or enrollment information that's happened here over the last couple years. Of course, enrollment is a big driver on our budget, the biggest driver on our budget. And so next month, after Adam's had a chance to go through the budget planning workshop, we'll bring back some implications to our budget based on this enrollment information. You know that based on our current enrollment projections, we've budgeted for roughly a 40 student decline year over year on those enrollment projections. And as you can see here from the chart displayed on the UEN certified enrollment, we were actually down 170 students this year, so well over our projected expectation. The team has heard me say, if you look at that over a 2-year period, our 170 plus student increase last year and 170 student decline this year, that maybe that's about where we expect to be. The big determining factor will be what happens next year, right? And what should we anticipate? So I think you'll see us work through some updated projections there with probably a little bit more of a pessimistic view of enrollment, knowing that this was the most recent data point we had. But I think this does a nice job of, this chart does a nice job of showing this is not a unique circumstance to Iowa City. Director Lingo different times has mentioned birth rates and reminded us of those, about what's happening with that data through the state. And I think you definitely see that impact here to multiple districts across the state with some pretty big declines happening across the board. In fact, only 3 districts saw any kind of a positive enrollment impact in their certified enrollment from this UEN list. 2 of those are extremely small, Mason City and Southeast Polk, see 6 or 9 student increase. And then you do have Waukee with their 395 student increase. And so that's pretty substantial. The other information that's included on these charts that you can see are also the open enrollment change. You can tell for us, we're a unique outlier there in comparison to most UEN districts that we gain students through open enrollment, and that's not always been the trend here in Iowa City. But we've talked several times before with the advent of Liberty High School, that really flipped that equation for us here in Iowa City. You see some preschool data change, and then probably the other one of special attention before I talk a little bit about some of the comparisons of where we rank in terms of some of the UEN districts in different enrollment categories would be the students on the Ed Savings Accounts or vouchers. Remember last year, as we approached this school year, this was the year that the cap was removed, the income cap, and so that's why you see some of those larger number increases happen to several districts, because that income cap or threshold has now been removed. And so we don't necessarily we wouldn't want you to receive that data thinking that all of a sudden we have several students that have left the district because of the vouchers or because of Ed Savings Accounts. That's simply students that are already existing in private schools being able to access that. Now, when we talk about the enrollment decline, there's probably multiple factors that do happen there, right? I think we can all recognize that some of the national rhetoric around immigration and our English language learner students, when I look at that in the Ed portal, our ELL numbers were relatively flat. And what that means for us is that's lack of growth, because that's where we've been getting growth in the districts. And so for that to be flat for us is almost like a decline, right? Because that's been offsetting some of our other declines in demographics. We also think there is probably some impact to school choice, right? You do see some increase in kindergarten classes potentially at some of those other choice options, but not dramatic enough to explain, of course, almost a 200 student difference. And then probably the final impact point we would talk about or come back with some more information would be simply we're graduating classes of 1,200 and taking in kindergarten classes closer to 1,000 or under 1,000. But I just don't think it's as simple enough to say that's the whole one-for-one equation, but that is a significant impact, right? When we have that many students leaving our system in the kindergarten classes we're taking in. It does speak to the birth rate, conversation in the state that we're just not seeing as many students show up for kindergarten. So those are some of the impact points that we think lead to the 170. I don't think it's as clean as pointing to any one of those things. It's a lot of factors in there. The other thing I did want to show you tonight, and the reason I have 2 different charts, is just when you talk about how large our district is in comparison to other districts. So if you look at the certified enrollment page, you would think that we are, the 4th largest district in the state. But it's a little bit misleading, because on the certified enrollment number, what you really have is you still have all the students that would have open enrolled out of the district factored into the count. So take Cedar Rapids, for example. I always use theirs as an example just because the number is really large and it's easy to see the impact. You see that Cedar Rapids uncertified enrollment sits at 15,900 students. Well, the funding mechanism, the way it works in school finance in Iowa is that they'll receive the funding for those 15,900 students, but you all approve an open enrollment reimbursement procedure throughout the year, where then that money will leave that district and go to the district where those 1,900 students they've lost through open enrollment attend school. So I think a more true measure is for us to look at the other chart where it actually looks at the amount of students served, kind of a butts and seats, that we use sometimes for terminology, about how many students are actually in our district that we're serving and how those weightings then wash out across the board. And here, I think you get a more accurate picture once you remove out that open enrollment piece, which is a straight 1-for-1. The reason I didn't attach these documents is because there's a problem with the Waukee data point that got sent to us. This came from Margaret at the UEN, and so I wouldn't want this attached out there because the Waukee is not measuring a straight 1-for-1, but if you added the Cedar Rapids net open enrollment out to their current students served, you get that number you saw on the previous page. So when you look at our comparison here, you see that Iowa City is actually the second largest district for amount of students served in the state of Iowa. So the only district larger than us, or the only district serving more students than us every single day is Des Moines. So just kind of an interesting way to look at it. The one, of course, that starts our whole funding conversation again is the certified enrollment. But remember, that's the open enrollment impact that hasn't been washed through the system there. For us, with that 14 number, it doesn't seem as dramatic, but when you look at districts like Des Moines that loses 2,500 kids to open enrollment, Cedar Rapids loses close to 2,000 students, that shifts that number quite a bit for the amount of students they're serving. So wanted to give you guys a little window into what we'll be looking at for the budget planning process as we start to approach the turn of the calendar year, as we get into that season, that of course then leads us right into negotiations and staffing conversations. And then I'm happy to answer any questions you might have tonight.
Directors, any questions for Superintendent Degner?
I'll just more of an observation. Like looking at the Waukee data, it's kind of wild, right? Because they netted 400 students, but when you go over and look at their ESA numbers, they track almost identical to ours. And so, the first thing I did was, oh gosh, what's Waukee doing that we're not if they're getting all these new students? But they're losing students to private schools at actually a higher rate than we are because they have a little bit smaller of a student population. So I don't know if that's just where they're building houses in the Des Moines Metro is Waukee, and that's why they're getting the 400 kids.
Yeah, and they're losing on open enrollment too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's a negative number for open enrollment. There's an impact to vouchers. I mean, I think it's just a sign that choice is alive and well. But there is a lot of that is where new growth, new construction, new homes are being constructed in the area. But they're impacted by choice, just like every district.
And going out to Waukee, it's like North Liberty was 10 years ago. And it's why whenever I talk to anybody from any of our councils, all I say is just build more homes. That's part of it. But looking at this, it's roughly a 1.2% decrease in enrollment. So state supplemental aid the past 2 years was 2%, if I can remember correctly. So if it was 2%, which may be a pipe dream right now, still puts us at 0.8% on the general fund. And I can say that we're going to get a bump from ESAs. I know after we talked about the re-envisioning last year, there was a discussion about where Superintendent Degner, you brought up starting to have community groups to help inform decisions about what are the priorities in the district. Where are we at on those committees?
Yeah, that's a great question, Director Lingo. We didn't move forward with assembling any committees. We communicated that at the end of the year. I would say a first step in our process, just around this whole school choice conversation, will be, and I've talked to some of you about this informally, is really a mechanism to get some feedback from our community here the second half of the year about things they prioritize and value in the district. And then also, you know, a question or two about if we did have to make difficult decisions, you know, what are the things that, again, they prioritize the most or would like us to stay away from? And those may be things that we are able to do. They may be things we aren't able to do when we get into a situation of budget reductions. I'm optimistic that this year this will not involve a public budget reduction process, that we will have to watch expenses and we will have to cut some costs. And so I think the timing on that is good because it's not like we're pressed with a very public decision or a public budget reduction process to have to take that data and think that we're going to act on it right away. But it should give us some good information. I think an important part of that process is also eventually a conversation with you guys about things you value and the things that you would want us to make sure that we are able to maintain and stand up here in the district. Because I think where you were going there, Director Lingo, knowing what SSA is or isn't going to be and knowing what these enrollment trends are, the budget picture is not just going to magically improve, right? We are going to have to continue to have some conversations, and we all have goals around whether it's reduction of class sizes or adding programs to our district. I mean, those are all things that are important priorities for us. But I think a nice opportunity for us is to get a baseline from the community about the things they care about and value the most. Why are they choosing us? Why are they maybe not choosing us? What are some things that we can continue to invest in? Or if we do have to make, in the end, again, difficult decisions, what are the things we should at least entertain a conversation on first?
I just want to comment that this is an interesting table, looking at our UN certified enrollment for 2025, because it shows slight changes across the state, but it doesn't show, to my mind, really dramatic changes. So I'm a bit puzzled by what to make of this data at this point in time, and frankly, I'm not inclined to make, at this point anyway, to consider rapid or major changes in programming or in our or in our plans. I think this district has been on the right course in terms of including all students and providing a great education for every student in the district through a great teaching staff. So my preference is if our discussions of enrollment changes recognize the magnitude or the lack of magnitude of those changes, and the fact that, and a clear statement that we don't plan on making any major changes in programming or educational effort or type at this point.
Yeah, I'd agree with you, Director Eastham. I don't think anybody's recommended that we would have any radical or extreme positions based off of this data. I think the thing that's concerning from the data is, you know, we're not an aberration on the minus 170. You see it across the board throughout the state, and it's systemic. And so I think we'll always want to be very cautious on, you know, anything that, of course, impacts our students and staff. And so, again, another data point next year will be critical for us. But we also have to have our eye on the future so that as we work through budget reductions before, that we want to make sure we've been thoughtful and planful, and that if we do get to that point, that we've considered options and that we have a lot of tools at our disposal that we can evaluate out what we think are the least impactful choices. So I think that's our opportunity, knowing that, hey, we can read a lot of tea leaves here that don't look super positive. So let's have some conversations when we can before we're put up against the 8 ball per se with some really hard choices.
When you present the outlook next month, can we get what the SSA looks like at varying levels besides 2%? Because right now the state is at a, I think, $1.3 billion shortfall in its budget. And I know Randy Richardson, who does a lot of Facebook updates, has commented on his prediction on SSA, and it does not look good. And just to have that outlook.
Yeah, we'll definitely ask Adam to include that in the update, so as long as Adam's able to be present, we'll be able to deliver that. I mean, I think there's a lot of mystery around what'll happen with SSA, like Director Lingo's talking about. I mean, there's a lot of compelling points that would show us, hey, this doesn't look good. There's also points where, okay, they're funding 3,000 less students. What does that mean for potential implications? What does it mean that they're also funding a private school program now with vouchers that they need to continue to sustain as well, if that's where their political leanings are? So there's factors on both sides. And so I think predicting it's probably is harder than ever as well about what that number will be, but we'll do our best to show some of those varying levels, because that's what we try to plan for as well.
Superintendent Degner, do you anticipate getting the corrected data for Waukee so these charts can be made public?
Yeah, I don't have access to all of the different districts' data, but I did put in a request today to the superintendent and also Margaret to just see if we could get that cleaned up, because it should just be, it's just figuring out which one of those 14,000 numbers is incorrect. Their open enrollment number must be consistent, so we just need to get that overall one. Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next up is our presentation for tonight, which is Universal Core Instruction. And
it's going to be Carmen. She's going to come on up here. So this is a little bit, I'm going to steal a little bit of your opening maybe here, Carmen, but the way we had originally planned this fall is that we would take you through kind of a teach and learning series of presentations and then eventually end with the Iowa School Performance Profiles. The state released those performance profiles, as you know, much earlier in the fall rather than December, the turn of the calendar year. So we're working backwards a little bit now that we did Iowa School Performance Profile. Tonight we're going to talk to you about core instruction, what that looks like in the district, and then we're going to come back next month with some information about interventions and extensions, and then continue our journey with HRS and how that's our improvement vehicle with all of this work too. So with that, I'll let Carmen take it away here.
Thank you. So as Superintendent Degner said, I am so excited because this is my favorite topic, so I consider this my pre-birthday present to myself, that I have a chance to share a little bit about what I'm most passionate about and talk about universal instruction and also high reliability schools, and so those two things are connected. So today we're going to talk quickly through just our multi-tier systems of support. We're focusing mainly on tier 1. So our multi-tier system of support is our educational framework that really helps us to determine how to best meet the needs of all of our students. And it's broken down into 3 tiers. So we have tier 1, which is our universal tier. Tier 2 is our targeted supports, our targeted tier, and tier 3 is intensive. And so our goal today is really focusing on that first tier, tier 1. And how that is tied intrinsically into the work and the commitment we have with HRS, with high reliability schools. And then as Superintendent Degner said, Eliza will be sharing a little bit on November 11th about tiers 2 and tiers 3, which is that targeted intervention, our intensive supports. So starting us off today, I know we've seen a lot around our HRS timeline, and so understanding exactly where we're at for this year in that 2025-2026 school year, and knowing that the work we started even with level 1 we're still doing. And so the understanding for today is just really thinking through how we are still making sure that we are improving on our instructional spaces for our students, our academic spaces with our HRS level 1, and making sure that those spaces are safe, supportive, and collaborative for all of our students. But then also we're working with our teachers to make sure we continue that work around professional learning communities and making sure that they have that collaborative opportunities to continue working as a cohesive group to improve instructional practices and academic supports for our students. Our level 2, really thinking through that effective teaching in every classroom. And so as we started out with our instructional framework last year with our new arts and science of teaching, we continue on that work again this year and still providing opportunities for schools to certify this year and next year, where we're really focusing on supporting our teachers through how to best improve their instructional practices in their classrooms. The work towards guaranteed and viable has been happening from the get-go, so we will continue doing that work again this year, just really centering on proficiency skills for our students to understand their progressions of learning, and then also to work around that priority standards and making sure that we are providing opportunities for students to learn the given content within a protected and viable time frame. So you will hear a couple of different vocabulary words today. MTSS is one that I will mention multiple times through that multi-tier systems of support. You will also hear around universal instruction, just in time for academic supports, and then you'll also hear around interventions and differentiation and how we're supporting those needs for our students. this is just a visual for you to understand where we're going to be focusing our work today, or just this presentation will be mainly on that green space. And so as we're thinking through those tiered systems, that tier 1 is your universal, that we're meeting the needs of all of our students. So you can see that green embedded under everything as we transition into that yellow and then into the red for our intensive. So our focus today is solely on that green, on the universal space, and thinking through how we're supporting our students in that area. So you will have a chance to kind of think through the different elements that falls under our tier 1 universal core instruction. You will see that tier 2 and tier 3s are both faded. That's information that we'll be presenting later on at the next presentation, but our goal today is to solely focus on the part that is highlighted, which is tier 1. Tier 1 is broken down into these 5 building blocks, and so that's what I'm going to be working with today, is kind of guiding us through what we actually are doing in each of those different areas. And so we're going to start with our first building block, which is time and opportunity. And as you can see, under HRS levels 1, 2, and 3, we do have just different examples of what we're currently doing, things that we have in place right now to support our teachers and our students in these different spaces. So some of the things I'll kind of dig into more, but right now as we're looking at that universal space of level 1 and that safe, supportive, and collaborative, our goal is to really focus on how we're providing time and opportunities for teachers to know exactly their core, to have time to be able to instruct and teach that core content to all of our students, making sure we're providing opportunities for students to stay within the core. We do provide those supports for the students outside of the core when we're working with our ELL students and with our special ed students, but we try our best to make sure that students are remaining within that core instruction as best as we can. We also provide opportunities for teachers to be able to work with each other. So as we're looking at that master schedules, we're really intentional about making sure that teachers have time to collaborate with each other. So they do have some of that common prep time, and so they can work, if they're teaching similar areas, they can work together and collaborate on how to best support the needs of students. It also helps us to determine how to organize teachers into professional learning communities. And so when we're looking at their PLCs, that master schedule provides opportunities for teachers to work as a cohesive team. If they have a group of students that they're working to support, they have time to look through different structures and strategies to best support the needs of our students. Not forgetting also that we make sure that we are supporting our students through our college career readiness. We have that secondary advisory time embedded in that universal, in their master schedule, to make sure that we're still meeting the needs of our students with regards to how to best support their individual career and academic planning. So we've talked a little bit about our DCAP, our district career and academic planning. This is time that we have embedded on a weekly basis for students to really focus on that post-secondary readiness and think through the different ways that they can and reframe or rethink about their learning from a space of career pathways. Our HRS level 2 in this work really provides opportunities for teachers to be able to go into different classrooms. So we're really working on those instructional rounds. So as teachers can see all the strategies embedded into HRS level 2 for NASAT, our new arts and science of teaching, they get to be able to determine exactly what are some areas of strength that they have and then where are their areas of growth. And the instructional rounds allows them to go into different classrooms and be able to see how other teachers are implementing their areas of strength and then understand how to best learn from each other in those collaborative teams and improve in their instructional practices. We also provide in our Thursday early release schedules, we provide opportunities for teachers to collaborate district-wide. So we have curriculum Thursday meetings that teachers can work with teams at a district level. And then we also provide opportunities on those Thursdays too for teacher-led Thursdays. So teachers also have time to determine how to build different teams within themselves, either at a district level or building level, to guide on their own learnings and improve on those practices they want to grow on. And so we're making sure we're intentional in those. With our new Office of Professional Development, we are supporting our teachers on different ways that they can continue learning in different areas that they see as areas of growth. And then the third part is this, in that HRS level 3, making sure that the curriculum we create for our students and for the teachers is guaranteed. So they're making sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students district-wide, but then it's also, there's viability in that curriculum, that we can teach the given standards, the given content within the time frame. And so we're making sure that we can provide some understanding with our scope and sequence and our unit plans. What we create is always a living document. It's never set in stone. So teachers have time on those curriculum Thursdays and during some teacher quality time to review our scope and sequence regularly and determine exactly how we can make some amendments to the scope and sequence to make sure we're meeting the needs of teaching the content within the given time frame. For assessment for learning, as we think through that second building block, we always want to make sure that we're continuously assessing our students' learning for growth. And so we do this in multiple ways. One route that we have for sure is, we mentioned this at our last board meeting, was looking at our screeners and making sure that we're meeting the needs of our students to see how they're best prepared for our end of year test, which is our ISAFs, our Iowa assessment. So those universal screeners really help us and guides us as a screenshot of seeing where our students are at that moment. We do that 3 times a year. We have one in the fall, in the winter, and again in the spring. And that really tells us if students are on track with learning. We have different ways through our PLCs. So teachers have, with that PLC cycle, they can think through the 4 questions of what students need to know. How do we know students know it? Through common formative and common summative assessments. How are we supporting the students that are still struggling, that have gaps in their learning? And then always also how we're supporting students that are exceeding, that have that higher rigor. And so through those PLCs, we have time to think through of how to best assess for student learning and not only provide support for students who are struggling, but for supports for students who are exceeding the expected standards. And that is also the part of the work we're using with proficiency skills. So as we create our proficiency skills this year, it's not only to support teachers to provide effective feedback to students, it's also for students to understand their progression of growth. And so it allows as a tool for teachers to have effective conversations with students about where they stand, like where they're at right now, and if they are exceeding or needs extra support, how we can provide those supports for students. So it's also a tool for teachers to communicate effectively with parents at those back-to-school nights and parent-teachers conferences around where their students are and how they can support their students in their progression for learning and progressions for growth. And so as we improve on those processes, it will also create a space for students to themselves be able to guide their own learning because they understand where their trajectory for growth is. Our universal screeners also provides time for us to work as a team to look at our data. And so we're continuously looking at data to determine exactly if students are on track, and if they're not, what are we doing to make sure we get students back on track. So it's assessing for learning to understand students' growth, but also for us as a team to understand where we are and how we need to improve in our systems to make sure our students are improving their learning before the end of the school year. Our third building block, standards, competencies, and behavior expectations. I've already mentioned more about those priority standards and proficiency skills, and I know that's kind of guiding our work, so I'm not going to talk too much about that. The biggest piece here is thinking through HRS Level 2 around context and HRS Level 1 around safe and supportive. So NASOT, again, provides us some strategies in that area of context to really build relationship with our students. So this is where we center our relational capacity to make sure we're intentional, providing tools at the beginning of the school year, informing students of those rules and procedures to make sure our spaces are safe for academic learning. And then also how teachers can build relationship with students, understanding their diverse backgrounds, understanding where their interests are, understanding how to best engage students in their learning and gear that learning based on students' preferences. And so it really helps us to understand best how to meet the needs of all of our students. So when they walk into a classroom, they feel connected to the learning environment, they feel safe with their spaces and safe with their teachers and also safe with their peers. Understanding through our positive behavior intervention systems of support and our social emotional screener, we provide that twice a year, and that is another framework that helps us as a district and as a system to understand where our students feel, what our students are feeling, and how we can best support their emotional needs. And so students can really express through those survey questions areas that they feel needs to be are areas of concern for them, but it also helps us to understand how to make sure our students feel seen and valued and appreciated in their learning environment. And so through those spaces, we understand best how to support our students' needs. Instructional practices is really our center around our again, our MTSS process, but also through our NASAT. That is our instructional framework. And in that is where we really are working with our teachers to ensure that they know and understand what effective teaching practices are and how we define that as a district. And so really under the umbrella of HRS Level 1, we're providing opportunities for teachers to see all of the 43 elements of NASAT and identify exactly through there what are some areas of strength that they see, and then where are some areas of growth that they still feel they need to grow on. And through that space, then we're providing opportunities for teachers to go in and work with other teachers, see other teachers implementing those areas of strength. They can communicate with their administrators around their areas of growth. And so as they go through processes of evaluation, those administrators can provide true guidance on how they can improve on their practices. And then they also have time during those professional learning communities to learn and grow from each other. But it's through those spaces that we want to make sure we're intentionally improving our instructional practices. We have also gone to the extent of connecting our NASAT framework with our SIOP framework, which is our framework that we use to really support our ELL learners, and through our AVID. And AVID exists at our middle schools and our high schools. And so we have done the crosswalk of making sure that as we're implementing the strategies for NASAT, we're equally implementing the strategies for AVID that we're doing to support our students' learning around that college career readiness, and then also for SIOP and making sure our students are getting the ELL, the multilingual supports, in the regular gen ed classes. And so all those supports are embedded in there. And then as we end with our last building block, which is instructional materials, this mainly falls under the scope of our curriculum review system. And so we have that process in place every 8 years. And so even though we do it every 8 years, we audit our curriculum every year. And so there's continuous changes that are coming in that requires that we're consistently looking at our curriculum and improving it. And so that system is in place to where we have 1 year to where we do our general year 1 of our 8-year cycle is auditing our full curriculum, understanding what we did previous years, what are some data that we want to collect, and how we can improve in those systems. In that year 2, we have our self-study committee, which is comprised of board members, teachers, parents, students. We do focus groups, we do surveys to assess and get feedback from our community, and then determine exactly what are some areas that needs to be improved. And then that self-study team meets 3 times a year to go through our data and then help us determine an improvement plan to improve our curriculum. And then after that, we have a rigorous process in place to then review instructional materials and make sure that we have the best materials in place for our students for high quality learning. So like I said before, it is something that is, even though it's an 8-year cycle with regards to budget, we are consistently reviewing that and making changes to it every year. We have teams with our curriculum team that works together through years 4 through 8. And every year we're connecting and reviewing the curriculum and making amendments and changes to the curriculum to make sure we're improving it and not waiting for 8 years to make those changes. So that covers just the basic information around our universal tier, just that core instruction. And then as we transition, next steps would be talking through tiers 2 and tiers 3 around some of that targeted support that we do for students, and then also some of our intensive support for tier 3. And so if you want to study ahead, you can look at the 2 areas that are now unhighlighted, so that tier 2 and tier 3, and you can read ahead of that, and that'll be presented at the next meeting for you. All right, open up for questions.
Thank you for your presentation, and I will just turn it over to directors.
Well, thank you, Carmen, for this presentation. It was, it's a nice change that's been happening over the last few years, that everything is so much more connected. And I appreciate the way you just brought all the pieces in to show how they do all connect to make for a better system for our kids. So, thank you.
I certainly second Molly's description of the amount of progress that you're making, that we are making, in putting all of these elements together in a comprehensive, thoughtful, and effective way. I am interested in having your guidance to us in terms of our ability to make changes in what the kids are being taught, that is the immediate curriculum, at the demand or request of community groups We have, as you know, over the past couple of years, had at least two requests presented to us to substantially increase or alter the what kids are being taught about current events in the worldwide. So can you just tell us how that kind of change in what is being taught in content of curriculum, how that can be addressed by the HRS structure?
I can explain a little bit of that, not so much through the HRS structure, but just through what we have in place for our curriculum review processes. And so as we think through and as we review curriculum, we have a rubric that helps us through 3 areas. One is that focus and coherence, which is, it falls underneath that umbrella, to making sure it's focused on the standards that need to be taught through Iowa Core, but also focusing on making sure we're aligned to the legislation and what the required standards are that we teach in our classroom spaces, but then also as we think through our Portrait for Graduate, we want to make sure that we're thinking through spaces that allows our students to expand on their learning and think through ways that they can connect with their world. And so in Portrait for Graduate, under the umbrella of Global Citizens, we do try to make sure that we're intentional in all of the ways that we connect the curriculum to real world situations for our students. And as we're looking at resources and looking at instructional materials, we're also trying to be intentional in how we're connecting students to where they can see themselves in the curriculum, but also be able to connect to other world areas. And so those are pieces that aligns, yes, with HRS, but mainly aligns with our curriculum practices.
And we can make that kind of a change in a relatively timely manner. That is, we're not tied to the 8-year curriculum review cycle, right, for incorporating things that the community brings to us, that we see the validity of teaching those things, and we have to make immediate alterations in our curriculum.
We do have a vetting process, and so yes, those are some changes that could be made, but they go through an intensive vetting process as a cohesive team. And so we work with teachers, we work with administrators, we work with our instructional coaches, we bring in teams, and we look, and through our rubric, we make sure that whatever the resource is that we're using is aligned to current legislation and to current standards, that we want to make sure it's aligned to our priority standards, but it's also aligned to our Portrait for Graduate, aligned to our mission statements as a group. But yes, those are things that we do within the school year, but through a vetting process.
Okay, thanks very much.
Charlie, I'd add that I think a couple of examples that Carmen's kind of downplaying here. She and her team and Brady have done some nice work, taking outside of your specific question, but looking at some other legislation, some of the changes we had to make almost on the fly related to 496 and the work we did around English and language arts. And Carmen's team did a nice job this year. Some of the adjustments we had to make to the health curriculum, things that we knew we had to do, and Carmen still followed a great process. Brady and other coordinators helped out as we did that work to try to make those adjustments, or not try, had to make those adjustments. And to make that specific connection back to HRS, this is some of the HRS level 3 work, the guaranteed and viable curriculum. And that's work that Carmen's been deeply embedded in what she's done. And so she did a great job of outlining how we're living that work on a daily basis. But that's really where some of that would live, is in that level 3. And like I said, Carmen's done a fantastic job for us leading that.
Great, thank you very much.
I remember, I want to say it's like 3 or 4 years ago, there was a lot of push around the state and the country to this move to standards-based grading. I know it was a big topic, and I see words like priority standards and proficiency scales, and I'm just wondering, is there a parallel to standards-based grading? Like, are they like a similar idea, or how does that tie together?
There are connections.
Everybody's
I'm
looking
gonna
at me, right?
Everybody's making faces over there.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'll just be honest with, the challenge, people have a lot of feelings around standards-based grading. And I think the thing we always want to try to make sure when we're looking at grading practices, we want to make sure grading is a reflection of learning and that it's not a point-chasing activity, right? And so there are some back-end pieces of HRS that talks about standards reference reporting. I think the first thing we've just challenged our system to do is let's look at what makes up a grade. How do we make sure that grade is actually a reflection of learning, rather than saying, we're going to all of a sudden do standards-based grading or something like that that becomes a lightning rod conversation and you really lose what you're getting to. And so the focus on proficiency scales, I think, has been a good starting place for us because it does get to what do we want what's the most important thing for students to know in this course? And then how do we make sure our grades align to the fact that it's actually a reflection of that, not can they sit down and behave well in class and turn in homework on time, but did they actually learn the content? Because they could do all those things and potentially not learn the standards, right? So grading is a very emotional issue, not just for students and parents, but also for teachers because it affects how you run and manage your classroom. So there's a lot of pieces in there. The one comment I wanted to make from what Director Eastham had, and these guys did a nice job of buffering it and not talking about it, that causes tremendous stress on our system. The changing of the standards, the things that we ask teachers to insert. And so while we can do a good job of managing and navigating that, I do feel for our teachers that when either there's a switch in legislation or if it's a local change we make, just all of those pieces and all those factors that have to be considered, then how we disrupt their scope and sequence to include something that an entity has decided is important is time intensive, is stressful in the system. And I feel like we see more of that in education all the time. And so when we talk about things we need to be sensitive to keep people in the profession, is also to be sensitive of what is that classroom impact anytime we make a decision that we can create a great chart and a great scope and sequence, but that's disruptive to a teacher's scope and sequence in all actuality, what they're gonna do with their kids, right, in the next week, in the next trimester, in the next school year. So just something to keep in mind as those things go all the way down to implementation stage, but I hope I answered your question on standards based.
No, I think it's great. I mean, I look at it as, there are certainly great positives. I think you spoke to pretty well of doing standards-based grading in terms of let's make sure kids are actually learning it. And I think maybe the HRS framework gives us the positives of that without maybe the heartburn of just making that switch. And so I think you did a good job of explaining it. So I'm glad I saw a parallel there and apparently opened up a can of worms over there. So carry on.
Just a question.
Thank you for your presentation, Carmen. This may be a question for the next presentation that you do. If I may not be here then, but anyway, that was a joke, guys.
Still have to come in November.
So if you're going to cover this, like we just wait till next time. But I'm really interested in how we're supporting our teachers in differentiating within the classroom and what our teachers are doing to help our struggling students, not only the struggling students, but also the students who already know it and how they're helping them continue to grow. So if that's something that is going to be covered at the next presentation, that you don't need to answer that now, but that's kind of where my curiosity is right now.
Yeah, it will definitely be covered in the next presentation. I mean, I can just mention the fact that as teachers are currently working through, when we talk about those professional learning communities and we have those 4 PLC questions, the third and the fourth one is talking through like what students do not know and how do we support them to get to bridge that gap. And then the fourth question is if they know it, what are we doing to make sure we're continuing supporting students in that learning? And so we are truly intentional under that umbrella of our new arts and science under NASAT. There are specific strategies that support differentiation for students and thinking through ways that we can help and guide that learning for students that do know it, how teachers can push for that rigor, for the higher level of rigor. Our proficiency skills help that too. So it really helps to understand what proficient is, but then what are we doing for the students that are exceeding the level of proficiency and what we're also doing for students who have not met that bridge of proficiency yet and how we can build those bridges in between. So that next presentation will really dig a little bit deeper into that.
I just wanted to make a comment that I've been in a couple schools like last year and witnessed PLC meetings. And I've been amazed at how teachers are able to go in and collaborate over some of the material, make necessary changes based on information, whether it's the sciences or math, or even I sat in one, it was second grade teachers. And so do your team go in and give them a presentation on how PLCs are supposed to work? Because I've just been amazed that they get in a room and one principal kept me in a room for 3 hours. Mitch, no.
Yes, HRS Level 1, I mean, we've been doing the work of professional learning communities for multiple years, but HRS Level 1 was really intentional in helping us guide teachers on what that truly means, and then also helping us really work with teachers on understanding what the 4 questions, those 4 PLC questions are, and how to then really structure their work and their collaboration and conversations around those 4 questions. And so teachers have been, we have our curriculum, we have our, on Mondays, the first Monday of the month, we have our principal and instructional coach days. And so working with that team has been essential throughout the year, because every month, we're really focusing on how to guide teachers with the work of the admins, with the work of instructional coaches, with the support of curriculum coordinators, with exec directors Eliza and Lucas, how to really guide admins and teachers and professional coaches on the PLC cycle.
Yeah, great job. Thank you for your presentation tonight and your time.
All right, thank you.
That takes us to maybe the action items for tonight, which is the SBRC application for special education deficit. And will that be comments from you, Superintendent Degner?
Yeah, the comments are pretty limited here tonight. These are 2 processes that you should be fairly familiar with at this point. So these are the permission for the reimbursement for overages on special education and limited English proficient. So we're just asking for your approval to move those forward. Just foreshadowing, at the next meeting, we'll have some SBRC exhibits for you to approve, but these are just specific to the resolution to ask for that additional funding.
And for clarification, a motion should be made as written on board docs?
Yes, please. The
Yes.
motion is written.
Okay. Now, is there a motion?
Move to approve the resolution that the Board of the Board of Directors of Iowa City Community School District approves the request for allowable growth and supplemental aid payment for a negative special education balance for the fiscal year 2024-25. The final amount of the special education balance and amount of supplemental aid will be determined by the Department of Education after all special education balances have been finalized.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. Director Finch, how would you like to vote?
I am a yay vote.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. The next action item is the SBRC application for limited English proficiency deficit. Is there a motion?
I move that the district's administration is authorized to submit a request to the SBRC for a modified supplemental amount of $4,871,100.57 due to excess cost of providing the EL program in FY 2025.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
I am going to have to do a roll call because it will not let me scroll down.
Oh, okay.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Abraham.
Yes.
Eastham.
Yes.
Istone.
Yay.
Finch.
Yay.
Wingo.
Yay.
Malone.
Yay.
Williams.
Yes.
All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. That takes us to agenda setting for tonight. And the first meeting will be, that's why I hate this thing. Oh, sorry. Policy and Governance on November 11th at 5:30. And 400 policies for employees will be reviewed. And that's all, right?
We will have the 200 3R1 clean version to discuss at P&G as well, although probably a quick discussion.
All right. And then that takes us to our regularly scheduled meeting on the 11th. It's the first meeting of the month. So we will hear from our student reps, ICEA, and public hearings, several presentations, several action items. Superintendent Degner, was there anything else you were thinking that we would have I think you said,
Yeah, sorry, I'm
documents.
struggling to get the draft one pulled up here on my own computer, but I think there might be a couple of things you guys request or are
Yeah.
thinking about that are also on our list here, so I might just cover them and then see if you guys have any comments or how you'd like to handle them. One, interventions, if that wasn't showing up on the draft, we'd of course like to come back with that interventions and extensions presentation as the follow-up to the core, universal core you just received tonight. The SBRC exhibits that I talked about, we'll have those ready for your approval. We'd received permission from the state that you guys could approve those after we submit them on the 7th. Will likely have to appear in December. The other things that I've kind of heard in passing from you that I guess I'd like you to think about if we'd want to talk about would be if the SNAP benefits run out on Friday. I think as we anticipate with the government shutdown, we've been working here internally about a communication and some of the things we can do in the district to try to point people to those existing resources and networks in the community, and also to help increase the capacity of those existing resources and networks in the community. So our team's done a great job here the last few days of brainstorming with that and thinking about things we can communicate out to the building and with our community partners. So you'll likely see a communication from me before the end of the week on that. But if you wanted an update on that progress, that would be a potential one. We would have the data from the commenters that we heard at the beginning of the meeting from the soccer survey. Our thought would be we'd present that back to you about what that survey showed us, and then revisiting what the district had recommended for the plan to move forward, and see if you had any additional feedback on what that original plan was. And then the last one, I know Director Eastham, you'd emailed through a question about the resolution that was received at the joint entities meeting, and if the board wanted to consider that resolution. And so those were the things I had in my notes that we had heard from you on the work session. We'll be doing a follow-up after tonight's work session to mental health resources in the district would be the November slated work session. So with that, I'll kind of leave it to you guys to see if you want to have any or all of those things on the agenda.
I know I wanted the update on the communication regarding the SNAP benefits and information that's sent to the families. So just so we have that in a public record, that would be great.
I certainly agree with that. Also, President Malone, I'd like to have us consider the resolution regarding Fourth Amendment rights for all citizens or all residents in this country that was presented to us at the joint entities meeting.
Any other items, or, I mean, are people fine with everything that we just reviewed for that meeting? Okay. And as a reminder, any parking lot items for future meetings, please feel free to pass those along. And we have a work session tonight, so when I adjourn, we'll give a couple minutes, but don't leave. Go ahead.
One other thing, just so you know, I don't think cell phones came up anywhere. Our plan is to let try one end, look at our data from trimester 1, and then we'd be back with you for a conversation about cell phones in December, about the policy implementation, any additional feedback you have based off the data we're seeing.
Great. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.